Hello, family and friends of my Harlem Portraits, and welcome back to the new season. And we are starting the new season with some new guests and new perspectives. We want to talk a little bit more about politics than we did before, because the next months up to 2020 are going to be fundamental.
That's right.
And we need to talk about that. And to start the new season in the best way, we have here WilliamAllen. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
What you've been doing with your life and in your life is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
You have been dedicating your life to public service.
Yes.
And you started doing it for very dramatic circumstances that brought you to dedicate your life to make sure that youth can have a safer life and a better life and better opportunities.
Yes.
Can you tell us what are these circumstances?
Well, when I was a teenager, my brother was murdered right in Harlem, and that just changed how I saw things forever. And I found myself just getting more involved in the community, helping people, speaking out. It was a difficult period, and I haven't stopped.
And that is fundamental.
Yeah,
you turned a tragedy into
an opportunity of service.
And that is not easy.
No.
Not easy at all to do things like that.
No.
Because people tend to look into yourself, into themselves, and not go outside and not turn into a good opportunity. So I haven't introduced you at all, because the list of things that you've done and what you have achieved is so much that if I started by introducing you, I would have been talking for half an hour. Right? So I'm just going to say 3 or 4 things, and then we're going to develop from there. So he is actually, right now, he is the National Crisis and Service Director for National Action Network, and he's been appointed and chosen by Reverend Al Sharpton to do that. And this is his new appointment. Okay? We're going to talk about all this. He's a Democratic District Leader of the 70th Assembly District, which is Harlem, where I live, where you live.
Where I live. Both live.
He's an adjunct lecturer in public management at John Jay College of City University of New York.
Yes.
Adjunct professor, School of Public Affairs and Administration of the Metropolitan College of New York.
Yep.
And he was one of the few black elections chief in America as the Manhattan Deputy Chief Clerk at the Board of Elections of New York City.
Correct.
I want to add one more thing because that's very important for me.
Okay.
And lecturer on parity politics.
Oh, yes.
Women in American Public Leadership at CUNY School of Professional Studies at the Murphy Institute.
That's right.
These are just few.
That's just a few.
Few other things. So, after we started with this few things, I read also in your bio that you consider an organization and certain people in your life fundamental to instill in you this leadership capacity. Who are these people and these organizations?
Well, growing up, I grew up as a youth in the NAACP, which was the premier civil rights organization for African Americans in this country. And what's interesting, the early founders and leaders of that organization lived in Harlem. Walter White lived at 155th Street and Edgecombe Avenue, and the great James Weldon Johnson literally lived a block away from my block. He was long gone, but he lived 140th Street between Powell and Malcolm, which 7th and Lenox Avenue. In fact, that same block, Ed Sullivan, the famous host of television, also lived on that block. And then my other inspiration institution is the New York City Mission Society, Camp Menacing Townhouse.
And what is that? Tell us a little bit more
Menacing was known as the oldest and longest running summer camp and youth leadership program, largely for African Americans, but it's also served other immigrants as well and other people in the country. And they believe that if adults spend quality time with young people, they can be developed into leaders. They can become the leaders of the solutions they need for their own life. And so those are the environments I grew up in.
And that is fantastic. You had the opportunity to.
They gave you the opportunity. They made sure you went to school. They went to college. They found money to go to college. They gave you your first job. They did everything a great parent would do.
Wonderful. This is wonderful.
Yep.
The reason why I ask you to specify certain things that might seem obvious to Americans is because, these programs is streamed all over the world.
Yeah.
And one of the aims for me is that people who don't live in this country and who don't know the history of this country will find out more of the importance, the fundamental importance of African Americans in building this country.
That's right.
That's one of the main objectives of this. So that's why I'm asking you to explain certain things, like the NAACP is a fundamental organization that started with the civil rights movement.
That's right, the civil rights movement. That's right, early 20th century. And it was founded up in upstate New York near Niagara Falls. It was called the organizing meeting was called the Conference at Niagara Falls. And in that conference, they talked about the number of lynchings that was taking place post-Civil War. And in fact, while the President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, had freed the African American from slavery in 1863, the federal laws did not do enough to protect us from being murdered and economically deprived. And so this organization came about to deal with that.
And what is important, I think, to underline is that this organization was not just black people.
No.
It was all kind of people that realized that it was so unacceptable.
It was unacceptable and a stain on the mission of the United States as a nation, where people came here to escape tyranny, discrimination, classism. I mean, folks came to this country to promote freedom. So it was kind of ironic a country that was created on freedom could possibly enslave anybody.
Exactly.
So that's the horror and the haunt of this great nation.
And this great nation hasn't decided yet on reparations, and we are talking about that right now.
And I'm glad we are.
Finally.
I have some ideas about that.
Good. We're going to talk.
We're going to talk about
Why
that?
don't we talk about that right now?
Well, I mean people,
we are not limited here.
Reparations is not new. And it's not wrong for people that's been systemically and systematically denied opportunity to make this request. It's just kind of sad. I just wish people would know the whole history. When the Japanese was interned in camps here in America, they received reparations. When Europe was all bombed out and needed to be rebuilt, the Europeans received reparations. What happened to Jewish Americans over in Europe, they received reparations and support. And when immigrants came to this country, shortly after we got out of slavery, they were given land and resources for the Midwest and the West. So asking for reparations, it should not be something that blacks should be just asking for. It's something that all good Americans should feel that it's right, especially when you look at the rate of incarceration, you look at the continued poverty affecting black folks. You got to say to yourself, something's missing. Why they can't get ahead? Well, hey, if you don't have access to resources, you're not going to get ahead.
And this is an argument that comes up quite often.
Yes.
How come that immigrants from other countries, they can have success and succeed, and African American no? This is very important.
Very important.
The reason you're saying, because the same opportunities are not given to African Americans.
That's right. I wish you could possibly show in this show a clip of an interview with Dr. King and Mike Wallace.
We are going to do that. You are going to come back, and we're going to talk specifically about this.
That clip, I'm telling you, if you listen to Dr. King and Mike Wallace in that clip, it explains everything.
Yes. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I started this show. So seeing this and seeing what's going on in this country with the discrimination, which is obvious, and there is no question about it, against African Americans, and especially African American men and African American youth, I felt you need to talk about it.
Yes.
You need to bring a light which is different, because being European, I obviously see things in a different, from a different point of view.
Right, that's right.
And so probably my point of view can underline things that for Americans are ordinary.
That's right. That's right.
And for me are not at all.
That's right.
So let's go back to you, and you were one of the first teenagers who was appointed to a local community board.
That's right.
In New York City.
In the history of the city.
And later appointed as the youngest trustee of a community school district in New York State.
That's right. What an honor.
How did that happen? Tell us.
Well, when I was appointed as one of the first, it was three of us, so we were actually the first teens ever appointed to a community board, and it was myself and one of the other teens. He's well known here now in the city. He's Scott Stringer.
Oh my God!
And
yes,
he's the controller of the city of New York. So we were appointed at the same time. My appointment actually was signed before his, so him and I always compete. I said, "Yeah, but your letter was dated a different date. You're like 3 days off." But he's a controller. And so what happened was my city councilman, Fred Samuel, had found out that Percy Sutton was about to approve the appointment of Scott Stringer and this other kid from the Upper West Side. Scott was in Washington Heights, I was in Harlem, and Michael Galopta was in the Upper West Side. And he had got word that they was about to appoint these two white kids as community board members. And Fred Samuel said, well, what about a kid of color? What about a black kid? And so I was actually out of the country
at the time.
With this time. I was actually in Africa.
Oh my God.
And I got word while I was in Africa, I was in Egypt, that I was about to become the first teenager appointed to a community board in the history of the city.
How old were you at the time?
I don't know, 13, 14,
what?
something like that. I was very young.
That's very young. I thought about 16, 17.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I was that old. It was so long ago, but it was like early teens. And I didn't understand when it happened. Neither I nor Scott or Michael saw it as important. Because as kids, we were already pretty active and stuff like that. We saw the importance of it as we got older, and the fact that here in the city of New York, young people are still not appointed, or their voices are still not institutionalized in community boards and other programs where young people should be heard. And so you would think after all these decades that it would have become a regular practice. I know that Gail Brewer has been trying to appoint more young people to community boards, but I think also young people have to also express an interest in doing that. You just don't want to pick any kid and say, hey, get on this. The young people themselves got to step up and speak up, say, you know what, I want to be involved with that. Here's my application.
That's right. Yeah. But I think that the last midterm elections have shown that young people are not sleeping anymore.
Oh, no, they're not.
They are awake. And you just saw what happened with the Swedish teenager, Greta.
Oh, yes.
She came to the States and she
She was incredible.
Exactly.
She was incredible.
So I think young people are waking up.
Oh, they're waking up.
And they are really
waking up. And it's funny you say this. I've been talking to Reverend Sharpton's daughter, Ashley Sharpton. And I said to her in a couple of weeks, I wanted to do a tour of the schools around the headquarters. There's 12 high schools in Harlem. And I said to her, let's find out how many of those schools have student governments. And once we find that out, let's go adopt the presidents of those student government and be a resource to them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so this how to bring young people already in a leadership role. Let's bring them in, give them support, and a basis to be heard, because they're there. I mean, I was president of student government when I was in school, and I knew a lot of other young people were president of their student government. So if we begin to look at these young people already in leadership roles and say, you know what, those roles are important to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very important.
You can cultivate them.
That's right.
And
by the way, the last young person on the community board in Manhattan, I just saw her this evening. She was here.
Oh, yeah?
Her name is Victoria Purnell. She's entering her last year of college at Duke University. And she's telling me that she's taking a gap year this year to prepare for law school.
Oh, wonderful.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes. This is fantastic. All right, so you today, in this moment, you're fully engaged in multiple activities. I really don't know how you do all that. You develop citizen leadership. You are working for crisis response and restorative justice programs.
Yep.
You are helping to obtain grants for communities in need,
that's
and you
right.
do that all over the United
That's
States.
right.
Elaborate a little bit on that.
The grants and stuff, well, a lot of times communities, they have issues and they need help, and sometimes people don't know how to ask or develop resources to address, I would say, the plethora of issues that impact particularly communities of long-standing need, you know. And so what I do is say, listen, these are the resources out there. You need to meet with your elected officials on a regular basis, and as you meet with them, ask them about the budget. Ask them what are they bringing specifically to your group, to your neighborhood, and have this as a regular conversation so you can be a part of the budget process, because the budget it's an annual thing, so you want to learn how that works so you can get in those applications and get things funded in your community. Also, you want to find out who are the major nonprofits that also give out grants and stuff. Learn who they are, read their annual reports, and build those relationships, and you can get things funded in your community. It's not that I get it. For example, back in the day with my mentor, Reverend Preston Washington, he gave me my first opportunity to write my very first grant application. I didn't know what I was doing, but guess what? He didn't know what he was doing either. We wrote.
You learned.
We learned. We wrote 50 pages. And all that's required was 3 pages.
Oh my God.
We attached photographs, articles, all kind of stuff. And we met with, that time, it was the president of United Way of New York City. We went down to his office. We came to his office. He was at his desk. He started laughing. He got up from behind his desk, went to his office door, closed it. He said, "You guys are incredible." He said, why in the hell y'all wrote 50 pages? He said, all that was needed was 3 pages. He said, you know what? I'm glad you did it like that. Let me show you how it's done. And he took off his jacket. We went to his conference table, and he said, this is how you do it.
Wow.
And we got, what was it, about $100,000 or something like that we were able to bring back to Harlem. And I said, Reverend Washington, why do you think he did that for? He said, William, he did that for Harlem. He knew that what we were embarking on was historically significant.
Yes.
And he wanted to make sure that we succeeded.
It was the first step.
It was the first step.
A long way.
And eventually, HCCI, which is known today, we were able to, from that one little effort, we received $200 million from the city of New York. Wow. So just imagine historically if that moment never, ever took place.
My God. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm glad you were saying this.
Yeah.
At our show.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
this is amazing
Yeah.
because we have the same problem with having grants in Europe.
Exactly. If it never took place, that moment, that's why I'm such a faith-believing person, that there are moments in our lives we say, why am I involved in this? Why me? And then you realize eventually you're given an answer for your purpose.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
and I don't have any regret about any of my work. I'm honored to be a public servant. I'm honored to have made the sacrifice I've made in order to serve. Dr. King made them.
You couldn't do anything else, I think.
Couldn't. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I love this. And now my work at the National Action Network with Reverend Sharpton is incredible.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because that's very important.
Yes.
Reverend Al Sharpton has done so much,
risk his
for
life.
the advancement of black people and civil rights and so on.
That's right.
Yet, outside of this country, his movement is not so well known.
Yeah, that's true.
And we need to let people know, because he's been doing this all his life too.
That's right. That's right.
And his whole family is working there.
That's
his
right.
two daughters are
his
working
two daughters,
there.
That's
Kathy
right.
Sharpton
That's
is
right.
working
Kathy,
there.
that's right.
Everybody in his family is
that's
there.
Right.
I went to see their headquarters on 145th Street and sit down at one of their meetings, and then they became more of their meetings.
That's right.
Because what they are doing is amazing. They are really bringing the community together. They are servicing the community with all kind of free service on top of free dinners for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all this. I mean, they're doing a lot. So you are in that organization for a long time, and you are now appointed for the crisis management.
National Director.
Tell us about this.
So as the National Crisis Director, I'm responsible how the organization responds to crisis through 104 chapters all across the country.
Wow.
I'm responsible in terms of how those crises are documented and what is the strategy to respond to it. I'm responsible for recruiting lawyers and all kind of resources, and also to give recommendation to Reverend Sharpton and to other key members of the organization. What do we need to put our resources in? You know, what's going to tell a whole message. So while we're working with one family, just like the Eric Gardner family, while we're helping to deal with that family in crisis, we're hoping to also change public policy so other families will not have to go through that kind of tragedy. And so right now, we've been meeting with Congress to get the Eric Gardner chokehold bill passed into federal law.
Let's stop 1 second. Eric Gardner, the whole world, and I know because when it happened, I was in Europe.
Yes.
The whole world saw that recording.
Yes.
The video.
I can't breathe.
Exactly. Everybody saw it. And yet, it has taken, what, nearly 6 years now?
Yes, ma'am.
To get
to
a final acceptable. Acceptable.
That's right.
And you were saying with this chokehold law that you're trying to pass.
Federal law.
Federal law. This is fundamental. Explain a little bit more about this.
So federal law means that it will be the law of the land for all the states. So it won't be some states do it, other states won't do it. All the states will be required to implement this law and to recognize it. You know, and it's critical. You think about, everybody saw this video, and it took 5 years even to begin to talk about a law. But that same video is no different than what people watched in the 1960s when the fire department and the police department in Birmingham, Alabama, sicked dogs and water holes on children. That video presentation on the news excited everyone to join the civil rights era. Up until that point, it was just like a black problem. But when the rest of the country saw that, white Americans, women, everybody. So you know what? This is horrible. You know, and so you think about that incident when then young people took leadership roles, and I think of these three incredible young men, Goodwin, Cheney, and Swerner. A young black man and two young white men went down to Mississippi to make sure those people got a chance to vote, to register to vote and have their voice heard, and they were murdered.
Yes, and they made a movie about it.
And they made a movie about it. Yeah, very, very powerful movie. But so you say, wow, people are really killing somebody because they want to vote?
Yeah.
It's when you think about this, say, wow, you know, what's that all about? And so when I meet with young people, I remind, say, listen, there's 3 young people that died because they understood the importance of voting. I said, you want your school fixed, you want your block fixed, you want an education, you got to vote. You know, and so therefore National Action Network exists because far too many people still don't connect their civic engagement to improving their own lives. So we're there to remind them.
And that is fundamental.
It's fundamental.
Unfortunately, we could go on for at least another hour.
You said we're going to have a part 2.
But we are going to you are going to come back. Absolutely.
I'm coming back.
And we have to say goodbye to our friends and listeners and viewers. I thank you very much for this very interesting conversation.
Thank you, neighbor. I appreciate it.
We are going to do it next month.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
I think we're going to have to meet at least once a month.
Can we do it?
Yes.
I'll come on.
We can do whatever we want.
I love being a special guest. Please have me. Please.
So thank you to you for being with us. Thank you, WilliamAllen, for being with me
Thank you.
tonight.
Yes.
And we see you next time.